a guy for 4 years. We lived together for 3 of them and I thought he was the one. But then I found out that he was cheating on me, so I broke it off and moved out. 4 weeks after moving out, I started to get served with court papers. Apparently, while we were dating and living together, he stole my ID and social security number. I was shocked to find out that he had taken out thousands of dollars of debt in my name. He took out cash loans, opened and maxed out credit cards, leased vehicles, and even started a business. I had no clue until I was served with papers for non-payment. Since he would normally get the mail, he hid any paper correspondence and kept me in the dark. Any calls claiming I owed money, I chalked up as spam. By using my ID, social security number, and falsifying pay stubs in my name, he was able to put me over $500,000 in debt. You know that feeling when your world is crashing down faster than you can rebuild it? That's exactly how I felt. I had no other choice but to file for bankruptcy. I even had a detective from the DA's office in my county contact me, threatening me with committing fraud. I worked with them to give them as much information as I had, which cost me a couple $1,000s in criminal lawyer fees. I filed police reports for identity theft, but he was never arrested. And things just kept getting worse. Before I knew about all the identity theft, a few days after I moved out, I confronted him about a cable bill that I knew was still in my name. I asked him to switch it to his name since I wasn't living there anymore. This is when he told me it wouldn't take much for me to hire someone to find you, bind your hands and feet, beat you senseless, and leave you in a ditch to rot. I couldn't believe he was threatening me and I was terrified. And here's the kicker. A few weeks after we broke up, I found out that I was pregnant. I now have a 3-year-old that he has no idea exists. I never wanted to talk to him again and I see him as a monster. After we broke up, I did some investigative work. I found out that he was married, obviously separated but legally married, had 2 kids, and over $100,000 owed for child support. He also had a domestic abuse case against him from his wife and was on probation for drug use. I feel like I dodged a bullet. However, having all this done to me has damaged me for future relationships. I haven't been in a relationship since and have no desire to be in one. I don't trust anyone anymore. Despite all that I've been through, I count my blessings, and my child is certainly a blessing. This is why you probably shouldn't look for love on Plenty of Fish. I met a guy on Plenty of Fish, and after about a week of chatting online, we agreed to meet. We met at a restaurant downtown, which was really far from where I lived. The evening went great, but after our date, when I was driving away, I noticed that he was following me. Because of the distance to my house, I wasn't immediately scared. I thought to myself, maybe we lived in the same direction and eventually he would take his exit. However, he didn't. My exit was coming up and I decided not to take it. I circled the entire city on the freeway and he stayed right behind me. This is when I was starting to panic, so I decided to go to my friend's house instead of mine. But when I pulled out the exit, I noticed that he didn't. This is when I got a breath of relief and I decided to go back home. As I was getting ready for bed, I started feeling dumb and thinking that I was just being paranoid. I decided to text him and tell him that I had a good night, and when I started typing, all of a sudden a message came through with a picture of my car outside of my house. I nearly died. My heart jumped out of my chest and I started shaking. I didn't know what to say, and he texts me and says, "I didn't know you lived across the street from me." But here's the thing, I've met all my neighbors and not once have I met him. I decided to go outside, and when I did, he was just standing there waiting for me. Why you probably shouldn't look for love on Plenty of Fish. When I opened the door, he asked if he could come in and hang out. I told him that I was exhausted and I'd rather just crash out. The next morning, when I woke up to go to work, my windshield had been smashed, my car was keyed, and my back 2 tires were slashed. As I was looking at the damage to my car, the guy comes out of his car with 2 coffees and says, "Oh, I thought I'd surprise you with a morning coffee." He also offered to give me a ride to work, but something in my gut told me not to get in his car. I told him I wasn't going to work and I called the police to report the damage to my vehicle. He hung out the whole time, but when the police got there, he started acting really suspicious. He walked over to his car and was hiding on the side of it. After the report was made, the police were leaving when I heard their siren and lights go off. I heard a cop yell at him to freeze, put his hands in the air, and get down on his knees. I look and the cops got his gun drawn at this guy. After arresting him, they told me that he was wanted for stalking, breach of probation, assault with a deadly weapon, and aggravated sexual assault. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was terrified. It took me a couple of days to get over the hypothetical situations that could have happened. For a split second, I thought that was the end of it, but I was wrong. Part 3 of why you probably shouldn't look for love on Plenty of Fish. About a week later, I was on my way out the door to go to work, and guess who was sitting in my driveway? I live in Canada, so essentially you're released on conditions until you go to jail. My heart was beating out of my chest, but I told him that I was late for work and that I'd call him when I was off. I never went to work that day. Instead, I went and found a new apartment in a new area of the city. I also changed my phone number and hired my friend's husband and his friends to go pack up my apartment and move it to their place for a month, and then move it to my new place because I was so scared this dude would follow them while moving. Once I got settled into my new place, I reported his Plenty of Fish profile. As far as I know, he ended up with a 7-year jail sentence. I haven't followed the case, but I know that he actually had pictures on his phone of about 10 women peeping into their windows. He also had pictures of them at work and pictures of their children. Since this experience, I've made sure to look into and verify whoever I'm going on a date with. Story time about how a serial killer targeted and followed me. One night I was driving my station wagon from Colorado to Arizona to visit my mom. I had a desk in the back that my mom had given me. I've always been scared driving at night because I have this irrational fear that someone in the backseat's going to get me. I was on an empty stretch of highway late at night with no other cars around. That's when this red pickup truck comes up behind me and starts flashing their lights while also honking their horn. I thought maybe something was wrong with my car or with the desk in the back. Why else would he be so insistent on me pulling over? I pulled to the side of the freeway and got out of my car. He pulled up directly behind me. I got out of my car to go inspect what was going on, and I got about halfway. That's when it hit me. Why was he still honking and flashing his lights at me when I'm out of my car? He started getting out of his truck, but I couldn't see him because his headlights were shining in my eyes. He didn't say anything and was heading towards me when something in the pit of my stomach screamed at me to get back in my car. I jumped back in and sped off. My phone was dead, I didn't have a charger, and I was terrified. I had no idea what to do. The next exit was 45 miles away, but he followed right behind me the entire time. Part 2 of how a serial killer targeted and followed me. I took the first exit to go to a crowded grocery store with a laundromat next to it. There was an ambulance parked at the laundromat with its lights flashing. I figured if there was an ambulance, then eventually a police officer would show up. The man had followed me and parked in the grocery store parking lot. He stayed there intently watching me the whole time. I was so scared I didn't even want to get out of my car. I felt like an idiot if I would have to tell someone what was happening. We waited there an hour until he finally seemed to give up and leave. I was so relieved, but I waited a while longer and then continued my drive. I was paranoid and watchful the entire time for red trucks. Fast forward about 5 to 6 years and I'm watching Unsolved Mysteries or some similar type of crime show with my partner, and what story pops up? One about a man on the exact stretch of highway with a red pickup truck who used those exact tactics to get a few women to pull over and murdered them all. I'm so glad something in my gut told me to keep driving that night. Part 1 of how my best friend's husband tried to hook up with me. 2 of my closest friends are a married couple, Nicole and Aaron. I've known them for years and they're expecting their first baby in a few months. We're all really close and I could see them being in my life forever. That was until Aaron started acting weird. One morning I woke up with a text from Aaron that said, "I've always been attracted to you and you've been on my mind a lot lately." I was shocked. He's never tried to go there with me before and I never thought he would. I didn't know what to do and I just stared at my phone in disbelief for about 20 minutes. When I messaged back and confronted him about it, he told me that he got really drunk last night and didn't mean any of it. He begged me not to tell Nicole and swore that it would never happen again. He continued to convince me by saying how the baby was due in a few months and this would ruin everything. I decided to let it go and told him I don't ever want it to happen again. I didn't want to break up their marriage or their baby to have to grow up without a father. I wanted to believe that it was just a drunken mistake and we could all still be friends. But in the back of my mind, I knew I should have told Nicole. And that feeling turned out to be right because it only got worse from here. Part 2 of how my best friend's husband tried to hook up with me. A few weeks after the drunken text incident, I received a Snapchat from Aaron one night. I opened it and it was the one thing that girls never want to get. The infamous unsolicited D-pic. I could not believe that this guy really sent me something like this after begging me not to tell his wife about the previous flirty text message. Before even replying, I had already made up my mind and I was going to tell Nicole. After I told him I was going to tell Nicole, he tried to convince me that he sent the picture by mistake. I replayed the snap and screenshotted it for evidence to show Nicole. Before I could reply again, he messaged me back and said, "Replaying a screenshot, huh? You must have really liked what you saw." I was fuming and furious that he would even think for a second that I was interested in his disgusted naked selfie. I immediately sent the screenshot to Nicole and told her what happened. I also explained what had happened before. She ended up kicking him out of their apartment that same night. Then she asked me to come over and we spent the evening packing up Aaron's stuff and putting it on the curb. I guess the next morning Aaron hadn't gotten his stuff fast enough and it was garbage day. Nicole and I are still best friends to this day. This is why you should think twice about moving in with your friends. My friend Amy and I decided to get an apartment together. We've been friends for a while and she's the type of friend that I could never get sick of and always hang out with. The first issue we had was when she started bringing her boyfriend over a few nights a week, which was fine at first. However, he started coming over more frequently to the point where he was there 6 nights a week. Her boyfriend also always parked in my designated spot, leaving me nowhere to park. On top of that, Amy and I decided we would go shopping together for food every few weeks and split the grocery bill. But her boyfriend is over constantly eating all the food that we bought, and this guy can eat. Amy also complained that the AC bill is too high and we need to stop turning down the temperature so much, and I quote, "Open the windows and rough it." I went to work one day and came back and the apartment felt almost as hot as it was outside, which was over 100 degrees. My dog lives with us, so I always try to keep the apartment cool. I immediately checked on him and went to turn on the AC. But to my shock, Amy had taken the control panel off of the wall and hid it so I couldn't adjust the temperature. I called her furious and explained to her that she could have killed my dog, to which she replied, "I'm not going to leave the AC on all day when we're gone for a stupid dog." This is when things took a turn for the worse. Part 2, why you should think twice about moving in with your friends. After everything that happened, I knew I needed to get out and start looking for another arrangement. The next night I came home late after studying with some friends. I went straight to my room, turned on the lights, and almost had a heart attack when I saw a guy laying in my bed in just his boxers. I started screaming and freaking out, and that's when Amy rushed into the room. She said it was her boyfriend's friend that got too drunk when they went out and he needed to sleep it off. I couldn't believe she put this passed out drunk disgusting guy in my bed. At this point I was seeing red and I was about to fight her, but I left to my mom's for the night before I did anything I would regret. That same night, one of my friends sent me a screenshot. Amy had posted in a local Facebook group about how she's looking for a new roommate to replace her horrible current roommate. I couldn't believe that in her mind I was the horrible one. The next day I took some friends and packed up all of my things. While I was packing, Amy had the audacity to come into the room and ask me if I was still going to pay for next month's rent. When I refused, she tried to guilt trip me into telling me if I want to keep our friendship, then I need to pay. I told her that nothing could save our friendship at this point and I left. I haven't talked to her since.